All right, y'all. Got a pretty special guest for you guys tonight. He comes from Austin, Texas, works with Live Nation C3 as an artist manager. His name is Jack Gallagher. So let's bring him up and we'll get started. Oh, got turned on. There we go.
Always check the mic.
Always mic check. So yeah, as I just said in the intro, you work with C3 in their artist management department. Been there for what, 2-3 years now, you said? And your main artist is Mount Joy, correct? Cool. Why don't you kind of give us a little bit more in-depth bio and what you've done and what you do?
Cool. Thanks for having me. I went to Loyola Chicago for 2 years, so it's not the same, but a little bit of Jesuit ties. But yeah, I started probably like many of you working in music in high school. Was a promoter and like threw my own parties. Started booking. I'd like DM acts off of MySpace when I'd see them either playing in like Atlanta and then DC or vice versa, because I was living in North Carolina. So this is like 2005, 6. And we'd try to pretty much get artists that were routed through town to come play shows. A lot of hip hop stuff back then. And then in college, I got more into like the buying side of music. Booked my first tour when I was like a senior in college, and went on tour with this hip hop group called Camp Lo. Might know their songs from like 1995, so you might not know their songs. But went on tour, and that got me a job at a booking agency called Mood Swing 360 after college. Also, you're probably young during those bands' time, but it was like LMFAO during Party Rock and Travie McCoy and Pete Wentz and some other things. But that was my first job out of college, and that was an amazing experience because I really learned how to like actually book talent and how the conversation goes back and forth with people that are interested in booking these gigs and how to look out for your talents back in every way, I guess. Was there for a year and decided I didn't really like the booking agency side as much. I wanted to be more involved in the artist career. And then since then, I've been managing talent one way or another. 2 years ago, I helped launch Mount Joy with the guys in that band. They were good friends of mine, and brought them to C3 in Austin, Texas. And so I joined the company in 2016, and that's like when they put out their first music. And the past 2 years have been just like, I guess, got us to where we are today, but a lot of different things and went on during that time. So,
Great. So we'll come circle back on Mount Joy and some of the more detailed things artist management wise. But I'd like to kind of keep going from the beginning with you. Earlier backstage you had told me I won't reveal what your major was, but let's just say it wasn't like the rest of these students in this room. You weren't in college for music industry studies.
I was a history major.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Didn't know if you wanted to divulge.
Yeah.
So with that, obviously you had no choice but to carve your own path. I mean, you weren't necessarily in some kind of track as an undergrad to opening doors or helping show you or guide you certain things. So with that, like, what did you find most challenging, and at what point did you know, like, okay, this isn't just a hobby in college where I'm, throwing parties and having fun. This is my career.
Yeah, I guess early on I had some success as a promoter, and as a promoter that's involved in the day-to-day activities of the show and production side stuff as well. So more of like a talent buyer that also worked with the venue. I was just enjoyed the day of show process, and then seeing the show itself, and everyone having a great time was just an amazing experience. So while I didn't take the classes per se in the music business, I was working that whole time in the music business since high school. I went to Loyola and then transferred to UNC Chapel Hill, and neither had a music business program. So I kind of just made my own path by like working in the industry. But I think, yeah, learning the different sides of the industry early on, I saw that I liked it all as a whole. And what meant the most to me, I started to notice more so was like the actual interaction with the artists themselves and like helping them build their careers and make the right decisions. That's what led me more towards management.
Gotcha. So, not to harp on your promoting days too much, but having done that myself, I know there's some pretty hard lessons to learn. Was there anything that early on, maybe
put myself on blast,
shoulda, coulda, woulda?
So I started in music when I was a junior in high school because after Hurricane Katrina, I wanted to do a fundraiser, and I just like cold emailed the venue at the top of my street, growing up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I was like, I want to do a fundraiser, and they're like, cool. I was on like student government or something in high school. I was like, I know a bunch of kids, I can get them out. I want to help raise money, and they're like, all right, we'll give you a Monday. And so they gave me a Monday night at this 600 cap club. And it ended up going really well, mostly just because in high school there's not a lot for kids to do. So if you give them a good excuse to go out and do something, you can have a pretty successful night. But from there, I got a couple internships because it did go well. They're like, who is this kid that got so many kids out on a Monday night? And so early on, I had a lot of success. The next thing I booked was this dude, Teddy Geiger. Anybody? Yeah. So I booked him. I don't want to, yeah, I can say. He cost $300 when I first booked him. I heard about him on like One Tree Hill or something, and I was like, he's good. I'm going to DM him on MySpace. And he was like routing through Chapel Hill, so we booked it early, and then the week before, he was #1 on TRL, which also might not be relevant to everyone. I don't
You just dated yourself twice there, pretty hard.
But he was #1 on TRL, so it sold out, and it was amazing. So that went well. Second big thing I did was I booked Talib Kweli that summer. Went really well. So then I'm like a senior, about to be a senior in high school, and I'm super cocky because I had made like thousands of dollars, the couple things I did, which is like 10x when you're in high school. So I booked like back-to-back nights for this hip-hop act that I won't put on blast in 2 different cities that were relatively close together. And I thought like, I can do it. I know people in that other city. I can get a ton of people out. And I choose like a pretty gritty hip hop group that just didn't go over well. Ended up having to cancel one of the shows, and you still had to pay the upfront half the money. And then the second show went pretty well, but enough that I lost, I think $3,000 as an 18-year-old. So quickly I learned that like putting your own money up for things, and when you like don't have the most bulletproof plan, can be pretty risky. So yeah, I was high and then low, like relatively early in my promoter career.
Yeah, that's pretty early on to go up like that, and then
that was like grocery store money too. I was literally working at Harris Teeter in North Carolina, so $3,000, like divide that by 8. That's how many like 100 hours that was.
Yeah. I love that story though, because it's the only way you're going to learn sometimes is taking that risk and then realizing
for sure
maybe next time it's not the best choice.
Yeah.
So obviously you had this background in promoting, and you kind of carved your own path while you were in college. And came out of it knowing like, all right, I'm going to keep doing this. With that, how much of it were you certain you would be doing independently versus working for some other entity?
Yeah, I think like it always was this idea to work for someone else because like a mentor of sorts. But a lot of times in the management side of things, unless you have an act with the juice to bring to the table that's going to already have an income, there's not necessarily a role for you unless there's a manager that's looking for an assistant, like a direct assistant, and then sometimes that person doesn't want you managing other acts just because they're expecting you to have a full plate. So it's kind of hard to get into unless you really do it, and that's with all my interns. I'm like, like the first day, I'm like, do you want to do this? And they're like, yeah, they all say that, but about a third of them are actually managing someone, and I was like, you have to start by managing someone or else you're never going to like, no one's just going to give you an opportunity to manage some cool act just with no experience. So I did that the first, like in my early 20s, I was managing acts and working full-time jobs too. So I was working in tech, like doing marketing. And the goal was like, I want to make this be like a business that stands on its own. And when I moved to LA, when I was 26, it was like I was making a career off of managing, but it was still like my email address was me. And so it wasn't like the email that people would like automatically open per se. Whereas if you join a bigger company, that's a real thing. And also you have infrastructure, which when I had my own company, I didn't have accounting, a radio department, creative department, all these other things. So it was my goal, if I wanted to continue doing it, I wanted to like join a team. And that's why it made sense when the opportunity presented itself to join C3.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. Having not worked as much in the management world myself, that's what I find most interesting. And the only way I know that it happens is grinding it out early on with some acts that you can get your hands on and have them propel at the same time you're propelling yourself in your own career. What I find interesting about your story, and I'm sure it's a lot of people's stories, and then I think a lot of people in this room would like to know as well, to make that next jump, that next move, when your artist is ready, I found it interesting that you told me how, okay, well, I knew I got him to a certain point, and then knew some folks at C3 and knew I wanted to go over there and have those resources. I guess what I'm getting at is, when you do take that jump, what are the type of things C3 or Red Light or some of these management companies, where to my knowledge they work, as people will bring acts into the fold and then it becomes part of the bigger picture. What is it they're looking for when you're approaching them? And what are you looking for your artists as well? I know you said a little bit, but
Yeah, I think established companies like that are looking for something that they can see the big picture too. Even if it's really early on, they can see like either the music is that phenomenal, or there's this big like social moment that's happening online, or something about the live show. It's like a certain piece stands out that they can see, like, I see this going in this direction. I think the combo thing with me joining C3 is that I'd already worked in the industry, and I'd known some people there. So, because sometimes there is a scenario where a manager's brought onto a company to really get the act. And I think that's something to be aware of as a manager, that you have to do what's best for your act. And if that's joining a company, even when it's not necessarily like the best financial move for you, that's what you have to do. And I think finding someone with infrastructure, especially when you're younger in the industry, to work with is important, or at least a mentor of some kind. And regarding like what I'm looking for in an artist, more so too, the music is the most important thing for me. Them caring about their business and their art as much as me is really important. Because in theory, your manager should be managing multiple clients. You have to care about yourself more than they do. I see a lot of artists that just don't fully put as much into it. And you really have to, because only you will like look out for yourself as much as you should be, probably. And then I think it's also like seeing that other parts of the industry are interested. So for an artist, like an agent's interested, a publicist is interested, in sending their music around to radio. If radio's not for all types of music, but if it is, like in that world, that there's some interest there. Seeing like early streaming moments, which a bunch of you are very familiar with, more so than some older people in the industry probably, but knowing how to tell something like it's starting to pop on Spotify or Apple Music. And that's like just combing Spotify weekly on the global and US viral charts, some of the top playlists. If you can see some movement there, there's a conversation to be had with the people at Spotify and Apple as to what's going on there, I guess.
So kind of earlier on what you're saying, relationship with your artist and what you're doing, so much of it to me, and I think one of the reasons I kind of did not pursue artist management, I dabbled in it for a little while early on, but I found it really difficult, and me personally frustrating, managing expectations and reality. And I know you said that it starts with enjoying the music, liking the music, what they're creating, but then it seems like the secondary to that is like, okay, is this a good fit? Do the values align? Do we see eye to eye? Are they going to work, like you said, just as hard and harder for their career because that's what they need to be working on as an artist. What are some of the things you have done and find yourself doing that helps maintain that relationship?
It sounds like corny, but it's really communication, just like, and not over communication too. Like, don't bother each other about stuff all day long, but communicate if something's not going well for you or something is working, and having like a back and forth, having a weekly call. Just trying to stay up on what the direction is creatively for the artist, because that's not always aligned with what I think, and we'll have a back and forth about that. That could be everything from, like, right now in my text thread with the band we're talking about, flyers for the fall tour, a sweatshirt design, a whole bunch of things. So it's communicating the back and forth, saying maybe it's not realistic to, like, get that pocket tee because this is what the price of it is, like the littlest nitty gritty things. And then the bigger conversations, like the producer they want to work with, or what time of year, like, to break off some time on their touring to record an album, because that's like something that's going on with Mount Joy right now. Is they're doing really well, but they want to start working on their next album, and they have to find time between, like, they've been on tour for like a year and a half straight, and trying to find some time where they can, like, clear their head and, like, work on the next project. So us communicating about that has been a big thing recently as well. But there's always lapses in communication. Just trying to have that, like, happen as little as possible.
So you mentioned over communicating and lapses. On just a personal level, when it comes to being an artist manager day in and day out, do you find yourself needing to compartmentalize things? So let's just say there's certain times when you're like, hey guys, I'm on vacation, or there's something really important right now in my personal life I need to make sure I'm tending to, because it also seems to me, that artist management can be quite a 24/7 endeavor. Live shows don't operate on, a 9 to 5. So things happen, and obviously you can't just be like, well, I'm not in the office, I can't deal with this right now. You're going to have to deal with something in the middle of the night sometimes. So between that, like, just managing all those hours outside of the office, in the office, do you have any tips for just maintaining your let's just call it passion for what you do?
Yeah, I would say I'm not great at that, and I would think most managers probably aren't great at that, because, like, not looking at, like, all my other friends are like, set your phone down, or, like, we're out on a Saturday night and I step outside of where we are to take a phone call or to, like, look at the reports on our merch app or something. And they might be settling. I might be in North Carolina and they're in California, so they're settling out at, like, 1 o'clock their time, which is like 4 o'clock my time, and there's something that, like, I might need to get involved with. They're also not a massive band. As a band gets bigger or an act gets bigger, you have people to handle those things for you more so. So you can just, like, trust them, a tour manager, whoever it may be, to, like, handle that. But at this stage, I think that is, like, a growing pains type of thing, because it is like 24/7. And you do have to, like, I've recently been trying to get better at, like, hey, like, I'm going to play golf, and I'm gonna set my phone away, or, like, hey guys, I'm, like, at a family dinner just give me 1 hour, and, like, they're pretty respectful of that. It's more me asking for that time and, like, putting myself in the space to separate from the job. But it is definitely 24/7.
And you said you touched on something too that maybe I hadn't quite thought about in that context, is kind of the further they get along in their career, the further you get along in your career as a manager, then maybe it does shift a bit. Is the more team and infrastructure you build around them, that they're able to more or less afford, right? Because in order to have that team, you have to play bigger shows, make more money to be able to afford all that. That really changes that dynamic as a manager too. I mean, does it?
Yeah.
Like right now, you sound like you're pretty involved in a lot of the day to day. And coming from working somewhere like C3, where they have a roster with large scale names as well, I imagine there's artist managers that operate a little more on the 30,000-foot level of just overseeing the rest of the team and making sure that all the major right decisions are being made right and well.
Yeah, and I mean, also not to make myself sound like I'm on an island. Like, my team we have a weekly call, and it's like 16 people, I think. We have a U.S. agent, a Canadian agent, a European agent, 3 PR people that are on every call, 3 radio people, 2 from our company, 2 from the label, 5 other people from the label, another manager from my company. So like, there's definitely a team. But the fact of the matter is, like, I'm the guy that's like trying to hold together all these conversations as the manager, and helping strategize like the agent, having good communication with them, booking the tours, PR with what we have coming up, release-wise, videos, a cool moment, something that happened at a show, whatever it may be. Radio, we're trying to give them like, we had a song do really well at Rock Radio this year, and it's like trying to give them constant good news to be able to share with all of their contacts. Like when we played Conan O'Brien, like sending that video footage to everyone we could so that, again, we're just like communicating with the rest of the team to help properly promote what we're doing. So it's definitely not a one-man show, but at 2 a.m. it is more so a one-man show.
Yeah. So let's talk about that team a little bit more. Obviously you just listed a, quite a variety there, whether it's booking agent or PR or radio, whatever. How much of that team is within, say, C3 and what you're doing, what you're doing there and their assets, versus, what I would imagine and know most of the time lies outside of the management company would be like a booking agent. But what are some of the details on like the different assets available to you from C3 versus what's outside of that, and the difference in managing those relationships?
Yeah, so radio-wise, we have our own 2 guys that work it, and then there's a woman at our record label who signed to Dual Tone Records out of Nashville. They also have like the Lumineers, Shaky Graves, Wild Child, a few other acts. But and one of the guys in the radio team is in my office, so I can pop my head in his door and be like, how did it go? And, Indiana last night at the thing they did. So it's like radio, it's really interesting, and I'd never worked on it before because I hadn't worked with an act that had like that single or the team around it to push or track to radio. But it's coming up with the strategy to like on the road hit promo almost every day. It's like at noon or 1 every day, or in like the local radio station, playing a couple songs and shaking hands. And then it's also like doing one-off radio shows where you fly out. And these 3 radio people, their relationships in the industry are, specifically within radio, are so deep. Like they know the guy in Minneapolis and everything about him, Denver, everything about him, woman in Atlanta, everything about her. And so that's like an interesting side of the industry that's so relationship based. Like you can't just I don't think you can really just be like the smart, young, savvy kid and just hop into radio and crush it, because you need to know, like, you need to have had a drink with them like 15 years ago in like a lobby in Chicago or something. It's very relationship based. So that's been fascinating to me, learning all the strategy behind that over the past couple of years. And the booking agent's not within C3. Our agent, Allie Hedricks at Paradigm. She's phenomenal. So her coming on early on in the stage with the band was amazing, because she was booking 150 cap venues for us, which as a 5-piece band, you can't make money. Like when you're on the road, staying in 2 hotels, Sprinter, backline rental, flights in and out of tour. Like you can't make money playing 150 caps, and her as an agent is also like not making money. And so it's pretty cool when a big agent like that hops aboard and is only making like $100 a night maybe on us, but she's willing to, like, she understands that you need to, like, as a band, as any kind of act, you just need to take the steps to like grow in room sizes. So the agent's a very integral part of the team. I have another manager, Matt Shea, who works with me on the project. He's manages the Head and the Heart. Who else? PR with Shorefire, which is outside of the company. I'll do some little PR things on my own too, early on before we were with them. But Shorefire is awesome. They're like a major player in the game, and you got to have really good PR to be able to get the TV looks and those bigger looks that you can't just hustle finding emails online and get looks. Like, there's, again, a relationship-based industry, very much so on the PR side of things.
Let's talk booking agent for a little bit, real quick. So when you're working with a national agent, with someone like Allie, and she came from Billions, right? And then went to Paradigm? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who's really formulating the strategy. Are you sitting down with a band saying, okay, we want to hit the West Coast in the fall of this year, and we want to do the East Coast in the summer or whatever, the Southeast, whenever. And do you put that together, with the band, make a decision and say, this is where we're looking to go, what we want to do, and present it to her? Or are you kind of allowing them to do a little more of their own and come to you and say, this is what I think you should be doing? Or is it maybe a mix?
It's definitely a mix. I think they're having most of the booking conversations with people, so they know what the vibe is out there. They know how much we're worth because they're having the conversations. They know the venues that think that we can do well in that capacity. So they're having all those like nitty-gritty conversations. From the management perspective, we're coming up with a strategy like right now we're booking March, April, May of next year. So we're looking at like, okay, we want to do a headline tour in March and April on the West Coast because we haven't hit that as much. And then maybe in May, let's look for a big support run with someone. And so then we ask Allie, like, hey, can you go, like, we'll do our own internal searches, talking to other managers, bands that we might want to target directly that we like. But then we'll also have Allie doing the same on the whole Paradigm roster, like sending out an email like Mount Joy is looking for support tours late spring. So it is a back and forth from like a strategy perspective. Early on for us, it was like kind of twofold. We knew we had to play the 150, 200 caps and sell them out. But we also knew we had to open for bigger acts. Like we went on tour with the Revivalists, Head in the Heart, Whitney, and some other bands. And we did that so that we could get in front of bigger crowds and grow in specific markets. Like in Chicago, we played Lollapalooza, opened for Whitney, opened for 2 shows at Lone Bellow. And our first headlining shows were like 200 cap, 250 cap. But for this fall, and the biggest we've sold out headlining so far is 250. But this fall, they sold 950 tickets because we've like mixed and matched what we've played, like opening for big acts that maybe aren't the perfect fit, like sonically or fan base wise, and also headlining, getting those fans that are really there to see you. And those headlining shows are where you sell more merch because those people are really there to see you. Like we'll sell more merch at a 250 cap headlining show than a 2,000 cap opening show because they're not really there for you usually. It also Spotify has helped so much with strategy. Like I know where we're getting our most spins. The back end, I'm sure some of you have seen like the back end of Spotify and Apple Music, but you can really see a lot of information as to what your audience is and what markets you're doing the best in. So we can make a plan off of that where we can hit and know it's going to do well and where we need to hit and maybe build an audience with a good promoter.
So in regards to building, obviously you had them pretty much from the ground up. There comes a certain point when, even yourself and the band needs to make that decision of like, okay, we're no longer going to wait tables on the side or bartend or whatever. When it comes to that, what kind of things did you factor into making that decision and that move, not just for yourself but for the band, as well as being able to take an opportunity, even if it maybe isn't the most highest paying, like is that maybe balancing some of those opportunities versus making sure, okay, everybody's got to eat and we're doing this full time, so we're taking X amount of minimum. You know, how did that usually work for you, kind of growing along the way?
It's really hard, and it's still like even when like the band's at where it is right now, where they're like selling out like 400 and 500 caps mostly, the money is still like thin because of the amount of like touring we're doing and the expenses that we have, and they're also not like fully rock banding it. They're not like sleeping on couches and stuff. They are like staying in hotel rooms. And
that's part of my point.
And they have a Sprinter as opposed to a van. And that's also because they're not 21, they're 28, 29, 30.
Yeah, you get to a point where, okay, I'm doing this all the time. I need a hotel room and at least a decent van to be in, not sleeping on floors. And that's the thing, it's quality
of life. Like some people just can do it, and I honestly can. Like I can sleep wherever and it's chill, but some people, you need to keep the band happy on the road because or else they're not going to play hundreds of shows in a year and do all the radio stuff. And that's been a learning experience as well because I haven't had a band that's ever toured this much. So, again, back to communication, like, how are you doing? How can we be better? Like, at a certain point we like stopped staying in Airbnbs as much because the beds were super unpredictable, whereas a hotel is just a comfortable place to stay after driving 9 hours or whatever it may be. So that's important to consider.
At this point, are they either adding or looking at adding production crew on the team?
Yeah, so
on the road?
We're finally adding a tour manager in the fall. I'm smiling.
That feels good, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've been like doing that remotely most of the time, which has not been the best. But also he doubles as a front of house guy, which is important for a lot of bands' sound, just to make sure you get your sound right. Because a lot of these venues, again, you're walking in like I'm sure you've been to a million venues where you walk in, and the guy doesn't know who's playing that. He doesn't know who you are. He's never listened to you. He showed up that day because the other guy called in sick, so he's not even the front of house. He's the monitors guy usually or something. So it's super unpredictable. To be able to have your own team sound-wise is amazing from the actual quality of the sound, but also just the band feeling so much better about it. Like
And
when we first went on the road.
Audience too, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the audience perceiving it well. You can't just tell the audience, "I was a bad house guy tonight, man. It's not our fault.
Yeah.
It's like this." You know, I mean, it's
You
your
can't
show.
like tweet out the specifics of why the sound wasn't good at your show.
Yeah, they don't understand,
Yeah.
nor should they have to. You know. But yeah, so that probably feels pretty nice.
It's amazing, yeah.
Getting to that point
Yeah.
and not having to deal with all that.
Yeah.
And with that, one thing that you know in my classes I teach and anything, just real quick, just stress a little bit how important advancing is for all these shows, no matter the scale and cap. It's pretty critical, is it not?
Yeah, shout out intern Sean in the front row, who's interned for me the past 2 summers.
Yeah.
Advancing is like nonstop because you're booking like, let's say a tour of 40 shows, and it's like trying to have a thorough conversation with someone that's having another 100 thorough conversations with people. So, and that's 40 of those. So when you keep like saying, where's parking? And that's important because like when you pull up a Sprinter with a trailer and it's on, you didn't realize you're on Bourbon Street and you have to like cross load or something, like that's a nightmare. So you have to be, the advance has to be so detailed. And I've gotten much better at that because at first I was used to, early on I was working mostly with rappers and DJs, and that's easy. You just bring a thumb drive and you plug into the CDJs and there's like 2 mics, hopefully the mics work, and you go from there. Maybe you sound check. With a band, you got 5 amps, drum set, everything. Don't need to go into detail there, but just being meticulous and trying to think of things that you shouldn't have to think of, like for international touring, driving on the other side of the road. If you ever tour in the UK, there's like no automatic Sprinters, and no one in my band knows how to drive stick, so we kind of like figured that out on the fly. Also in the UK, there's like different outlets in the walls, so you need an adapter for the amps, or else you're going to show up to the venue and look like an idiot. And that's something I'd never thought of because I'd never had someone tour in the UK. So just asking like people that you think know more. This is another like just constant thing I try to tell people. Just like ask people that know more than you about things questions. Like that's why C3 is great too. There's a number of amazing managers that I can just bob my head in their office and be like, I'm dealing with this, or I need a 15 by 15 stage banner in a week. Who are the guys to hit up? And they'll hit me with like a bunch of different companies and quotes they've gotten in the past. Having people that you can reach out to, and I mean, you guys are all going to school for this. I didn't have many professional, like people that were trying to be professional contacts when I was coming up at your age. So reach out to the kid in your class that you know has the artist that's doing better on Spotify than your artist. Reach out to the artist that's doing better than you are and ask questions. If you see them getting blog posts, it probably just wasn't out of the air, like out of the blue. They probably spoke to someone, or even like from a production side, like find out who their producer was, who their mixer was, who does their mastering. Find out different quotes. Don't just get one quote for a mix or a master, because you know you can get someone else that's just as good for usually for cheaper. That's not you know going against great mixers and mastering people, but make sure you get quotes and like get ideas of who's done what. And that's amazing too on Spotify now and Apple. You can like see the production credits and the mixing credits, and so you can really like if your favorite band is whoever, you can go and look at their music and see who worked on their stuff. And if you can figure out a way to afford it, maybe you can work with those same people, or maybe you want to send them your music and they'll do it for cheap because they love your music. And that's a real thing. Like we've had people work with us when we didn't have any money just because they love the music and they realized the upside of being attached to a big song, because there is an upside. Like as a manager, as the mixer, as whoever, like Mount Joy having a #1 single at Rock Music is a story for them all to tell. So yeah, ask questions, get quotes from other people. Don't be afraid to sound stupid.
Okay. That's great advice, all right there, all in one. I think with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Anybody have any questions for Jack? Yeah.
How do you prioritize when you're managing multiple talents?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's just how much work there is. Like it's like anything else in life. It's like how much work is there to do with each act. I'm working with other acts right now that are like baby acts are more of a developmental side of things. So it's not like official. I'm not like I'm your manager. He's my manager. It's more like we're working together. Is this going to be a good fit? I'm going to do everything I need to do as a manager, but I might not be putting in that like 12 hours of researching blogs. Like I'm going to do as much work as there is work to do. And sometimes when there's less work to do, you do find that time to work on other things, maybe pick up another act or maybe spend 12 hours trying to find blogs, but I can't really do that anymore.
Got anyone else? Yeah, right over here.
Yeah. So in the early days, what did you do a lot of shows?
In high school, it was literally MySpace and flyers and like hustling and making those things I did fun. Like they were all just good parties, and so people would come back. Don't like spread your promotional capital too thin. So like, if you guys are all going to school here and playing shows, a lot of people will say like play every show, like get the practice in. I would say probably not play every show. When you do a show, make it impactful. Unless you really think you need the chops of like going out and playing to like get better. I would say if you have to bother your friends 3 times a semester about shows, as opposed to 12, as you all know, that just is going to be more productive. Yeah, and I tell that to bands in Austin all the time. I'll talk to young bands that are doing really well, but maybe one night they could do 500 tickets, and then the next night do 40. It's just like, I would do a little less in your own market. I don't know what you would say to that.
I would completely and absolutely agree,
Yeah.
especially here in New Orleans.
And like try to play the place that has like the little bit better stage, a little bit better sound that's gonna make you look better. Yeah.
Got any more right now? Yeah, over here.
You talked about looking at Spotify artist statistics and Apple Music. How do you look at Apple Music? Because I know Spotify has the artists. That's Spotify.
Apple Music has a back end too. It's just like a little bit harder to get. So they've been releasing it out somewhat slower through like artist management companies and stuff like that. If you have a story there and like you have income and revenue coming in from there, if you reach out after some level of back and forth, I'm sure that you could get access. If there's not that big of a story there, I would just keep your head down and keep working, and at a certain time, like you'll be able to see that information.
Up here.
What do you look for in an artist? Like, how do you decide versus who I want to manage?
I've managed a lot of people, like most of which I don't manage anymore, and I think it's like personalities, and if that works, like you're just the vibe between each other. When you're communicating, does it feel like it's going to work or it's not? Talent, like I said before, just how talented how talented are they? Like, what's the vibe that you're getting when other people see them? And commitment, like I said before too, just that they're down to work harder than I am on their business.
Up top, Tammy.
I always thought about the manager-artist relationship as being something that needs to be like really one-on-one and really like 2 people pushing each other to like build, at least from an independent standpoint. So how important would you say that is as a manager that manages multiple artists? Or like, do you think that you care more about one artist or give more energy to one artist as opposed to
I definitely don't care more. Do I have to spend more time with some? Like I said before, yeah, just because there's more work to be done. And again, I do care more if they care more. Like, if our communication is positive and like we have a plan and we're working through trying to get them to like the next step of their career, my level of caring across the board is the same. But that's not always the case. Like, it's hard to be a full-time artist. So I've managed people that weren't full-time artists, and that's hard too. Like, if you don't have the time to like fully commit to your craft. But that can also go the other way. And if you are a full-time artist, but maybe you're depending on your art for money, I think it's sometimes better to not be a full-time artist, to work and make some money on the side so that you can afford like investing in your own career. I know there's a little bit of a tangent on what you asked, but like finding people that just are committed to it.
At what point when you were managing like your artists did you think, okay, at this point it's time to take it to the next level as far as like going out and maybe saying, okay, now we're ready to go tour, or
Yeah.
saying, okay, now we need to start looking at marketing towards the radio, and at what point like do you think that's necessary on a lower scale?
Yeah, I think you'll know. Like if you're like DMs are blowing up to come to Baton Rouge, like you maybe should do a show in Baton Rouge. And I say the same thing about like singles and albums. Like a lot of people, like their dream is to put out an album and a project that's like 15 tracks. But the fact of the matter is the audience, unless they're asking for it, nowadays are more so consuming singles through the streaming platforms. So as an artist, I would say like focus on those singles, and that'll give you a better idea too. Like if one single is really popping, and like people are telling you, like people are banging down your manager's email or whatever it may be that like this song's a hit, then maybe you look into like a radio campaign and bringing in some outside people. Same with labels. Like people harp on like the unsigned thing really hard. Usually behind each unsigned story, there's money. So like, don't be, I definitely anti-label, I wouldn't say is like the most positive thing. If you need the money and you need to grow your team, that's the time when you should join a label. If you don't need the money and you're good with your team, you don't need to join a label. So you'll kind of know at like the different points of your career when like, okay, it's time to hit the road on tour. Okay, I should be putting more money into marketing. And until then, just really keeping your head down and worrying about your own art and having your shows and everything you put online be as impactful as possible.
Anybody on that side of the room before I take it over there? Let's jump over here, right up front. Cyrus.
Is there any strategies you use special to you or anything that adds convenience to like especially time management or like managing multiple acts or like working with everyone through the day, scheduling them out in their own slots, I guess?
Yeah, it's difficult, especially when you are working with different acts and other things in general. I use Slack. I use pretty like religious with scheduling meetings, not just like saying in an email, let's have a call tomorrow, like sending out an invite, confirming that, having a good like call-in line that you can send out quickly, a free call-in line to a group of people is important. Weekly calls to just like communicate with your team what's going on, and if someone can't make it, finding a new time, not just like pushing it off.
Anything else? Anyone else? We have one over there. Oh, over here. Here we go. Back over there.
Yeah, so I was wondering, you were talking, or you spent a lot of time talking about money and about investing money into your artists, and about, you've also talked a lot about like artist integrity, and I was just wondering how you find that balance between investing money in your artists and keeping your artist integrity, and understanding that at the end of the day you gotta bring home a paycheck to put food on the table.
Yeah, I think investing money is from a manager. Investing money into your artist is a somewhat dangerous thing. It puts the expectations into a little bit different place. You're being an investor. You're not just being a friend that's giving your buddy some money for a release. So I'd be really careful with that. That being said, if you do need money, I'd go find it. Like come up with a creative way with them, be it through their family or friends or GoFundMe or something. Kickstarter that you can come up with if you need $500, $1,000, because to do a proper campaign for an EP, singles, with videos plus some touring that might not make money, but you think you need to do the touring to get in front of people and build your story, it costs money. So coming up with a more creative way than yourself to fund the artist, unless you got the money, and if you have the money like that, contracts and just like making sure you're good, and like it shouldn't just be like you get your money directly back from the investment. You should probably get some interest, and it should be like an actual business.
All right, that's great. All right, let's do one more right up here.
How much do you recognize like potential in an artist rather than just like what their talent is right at the moment?
I think all the time, like especially going to live shows. Living in Austin, I go to like 3 shows a week, and there's so much talent there. And so when I go to these shows, I'm just I'm there as a fan, but also as like the business side, and seeing a mixture of like their live performance skills, the songs that they have, their energy on stage. Maybe they got a little bit of merch that looks cool. Like going to the live things, you can see that. And And then also just finding things on Spotify or Apple Music where you can go and like look at their other socials and see if there's a consistent brand and it, like an aesthetic, and that they have a bigger vision of on their own of like what their brand or project should look like. That's when I see all those things combined, I see like a lot of potential in artists.
All right, well, I think that'll be enough for tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Let's thank Jack.